Ask a question. Is there anybody here that has never been to one of our workshops? Okay. Out of those people, is there anybody that has not at least read one of the books or taken the Cathara course or something? That's not too bad. Okay. I asked this question because we don't do what we call closed groups. We don't discriminate against people that have X amount of knowledge compared to Y amount of knowledge. It makes more work for me because I have to come into a situation and try to literally harmonize the group consciousness field where the people that don't know any of the information don't know the reference points that I would use, and the people that do know it and heard it over and over again could get bored if I don't do it right. So I asked the question first of all to get an idea of where I need to go and how carefully I need to backtrack to explain things, because I don't want to lose anyone. The information that we present, we, meaning those of Azurite Temple and those that I will talk about in a few minutes, we do our best to bring you information that is, some people say, it's out there, but it's also extremely practical. It's very usable. It's important to me as a speaker, as a person who cares about you and about you being able to use something I have to give, that I take the time to try to get whatever questions you might have. Now, the questions are fun because there's usually not a lot of time, especially with big groups, for question and answers, for individual question and answers. So I will try as I go along to create a sequence of information that will help you to at least get 50% of it. And the other 50 you'll still get, it just might not assimilate yet. It'll take you maybe 2 days or a week or a month. When we give workshops, they are for a purpose. They're for personal purposes of spiritual growth, for the advancement of consciousness, not just consciousness studies. You can study it all you want, but learning how to use it is what makes studying it worthwhile. So we will give you information that will assist you on a personal level, but we also do that within the greater context, because you don't exist as an island unto yourself that doesn't have any relationship to anything else in the universe. Every one of us are a part of a larger universal drama, a larger universal reality field. Because of that, we will give information in a way that first helps you to understand certain concepts in relation to yourself, and then how that applies and how those concepts apply to the greater picture of what's happening on this planet right now. This planet does not exist alone in space and time. It exists as part of a galaxy, that's part of a universe, that's part of even larger structures. So one of the things that our teachings are built upon is called the Law of One, which is an interpretation of science and spirit that acknowledges the interconnection between all life fields, from the personal level to the planetary, to the galactic, to the universal, to the cosmic, and to source. So you will have information that can be applied to every one of these levels of development. Most people, when they start spiritual development, begin where they are, which is, I am me. That's the place to begin. You can't begin someplace else because your consciousness is stationed right here with you in your body right now. When you start with I am me and start to learn about the parts of your consciousness that you have that you may have forgotten now that you're in a body, you begin a process of expansion of awareness. That expansion of awareness assists not only your mind to expand, but it changes your body as well, because your consciousness is anchored or rooted into this three-dimensional reality through your DNA. The chemical DNA and something behind the chemical DNA that's called the substrand DNA matrix. So your body is as spiritual as your mind and your spirit are. But in our society, we've lost touch with the ancient knowledge that taught us this. Once upon a time, everyone knew this as common knowledge. The science and the spirit went hand in hand. Right now, because of many events in history, some of you know those events because we've had workshops that dealt extensively with what's called the hidden and forbidden history of this planet and of our race and those kind of things. In the ancient of days, the ancient races had all of this information. They had an understanding of their history, how they got here, how the planet got here. In our history line, we have, many thousands of years ago, lost the information and the memory. There were things, conditions, that created that situation. There are conditions that will operate as permanent until we do something to change them. When we work with the techniques. I like to call them techniques because they're things you do with yourself and with your mind. They are called bioregenesis techniques. Bio refers to the biology and the biological template. Regenesis refers to recreating it, bringing it back to what it originally was. So our memory comes back, and so our consciousness, our spiritual consciousness, which is stationed in higher dimensional fields, begins to have the ability again to anchor itself into our bodies here. This is a process of awakening that is a journey like you would not believe. For those of you who haven't started the journey on a conscious level yet, realize that there are levels of your awareness that are already fully conscious of the fact that you're evolving. You will learn more and more as you grow to become a person who does conscious evolution, which means the part of you that's here also starts to understand the process you're involved with. Now, this workshop over this weekend is going to be a challenge for a couple of reasons. One is because it is a mixed group, where this is the highest level of information that's been provided so far. It is the master's course of the masters. So for the people who have been a part of this work for a while now and have come to numerous workshops, they're going to get a lot more out of it than the people who have no exposure to this work. But you can still get a lot out of it because the techniques that will be given and practiced in this workshop you can use even if you didn't know anything about them. Teaching you about them helps your mind to understand why you would want to do them, and it helps you develop an understanding where you can trust doing them. Because it isn't wise to go out and just do techniques of energy that do stuff in your body that you don't know what it is. So we explain what it is. But this is going to be very challenging for me to try to get this level of information across to you. For one reason is because I was just informed about it. The level of information that I'm talking about is on what is called a security clearance. All right, in the interdimensional spectrum, which for the people who are new, is part of the reality field we are dealing with. It's a multidimensional system, 15-dimensional time matrix. We're dealing with 15 dimensions, 15 levels of consciousness, and information and identity stationed at each of those levels. The information that this workshop is based on was on D14 security clearance. It was a security clearance that even people that on this planet that walk around and say they're ascended masters and those kind of things, they can't access this. It's a collective decision from a much higher place as to whether that type of knowledge will be added to a reality system or not. Because knowledge can be extremely helpful in healing and in growth, but if it's applied with a lack of ethics or a lack of understanding, it can also be a harmful thing. So there's been many thousands of years on this planet that certain levels of knowledge were not permitted because the consciousness of the beings that live here had de-evolved to the degree that they didn't remember why there were certain laws of how you use power when you have it. So that power and the memory of how to use it was taken away. It wasn't taken away by what we call guardian groups or angelic races. It was taken away by groups that we call fallen angelic races. Now, for the new people, it's interesting. When I talk about things like this, to use my reference points, whether I will lose a person or not depends upon which side of a polarity issue the person is on. Right now, people that come to workshops like this have either some interest in spiritual development or they have some interest in things like UFOs and sightings and paranormal activity. All right? Now, people that work with this program start to realize they're all of the same thing. So if you're a person who's been interested in, say, the UFO movement and following that kind of thing, and you hear me talk about fallen angelics, I can just imagine that your astral body will roll its eyes and say, oh, here we go, another light, light, love, and fluffy-headed person. It's not that kind of information. So I wanted to point this out. So if I use terms ETs, UFOs, that they're not my favorite terms to use because they're misleading. But if I use terms like angels and angelics, that does not mean I am a person that's presenting anything you've ever heard before in many, many thousands of years on what angels and angelics are, or fallen angelics. So the people that are new, I would ask you to suspend judgment on the terminology that's used for a while and try to get more interested in the concepts that are being moved around And later, if you're interested in exploring it, you'll find out why certain words are used to describe certain things. ETs and angelics can be considered the same thing, but ET is a misleading concept because it makes you think of other beings that are in physical systems that use mechanical spaceships to get here. And that completely does not touch upon the reality of beings who are not made out of a matter density level like we are, and the fact that they have the ability to do intertime travel and interspace travel without the use of vehicles. So we are talking about ET issues, we are talking about angelic issues, but more than anything, we're talking about spirituality and manifestation, and what it means to be in a manifest world. The information that we have had, now this information started to be given for public release in 1998, and it was ready for publication in May of 1999. That is when we did a simultaneous publication of 2 books called Voyagers, The Sleeping Abductees, which was Voyagers 1, and Voyagers 2, The Secrets of Amenti. The Secrets of Amenti book started to explain some of the lost history of this race. It started to explain about the realities of interdimensional mechanics, and it started to explain about something called the Halls of Amenti Stargates. The word Amenti is an ancient word that goes back to another place that's not on this planet. The Halls of Amenti are a series of stargates that exist in this planet, and they have for many millions of years. The stargates of this planet are a hidden reality. Our scientists, because they do not have interdimensional transparticle science available to them right now, do not realize that stargates exist. But many of them doing quantum mechanics theorize that is definitely possible, but they don't have the framework to justify in mathematical formula how exactly something like that might occur. And therefore, if science investigates the concept of stargates, they are doing so blind. They are doing so without an understanding of the templates, which are the blueprints for such things, how they might work. Fortunately, there are beings in this huge, massive universe of ours that never lost touch with the information. There is a way that things work. There is a format, and there is a structure and a blueprint for how reality systems are built, for how stargates work in planetary systems, for how consciousness and the beings on a planet have a relationship to the stargates. For many thousands of years, the information on the Halls of Amenti stargates was common knowledge among human races, ancient human races, the memory of who has been intentionally buried. The relics or evidence, physical evidence, has been taken on purpose by other beings that have visited here. We have much to learn about ourselves, and that learning can begin if we start to learn a little bit about our planet. Because when it comes down to it, anybody that's taken the Kathara Biospiritual Healing System Level 1 course and what was on the Kauai workshop will understand what I mean when I say the body and the planet are built in the same way. They have a different outside form, but their core template is structured exactly the same way. The galactic template is structured the exact same way. The template I'm talking about it can be called several different things. It can be called the divine blueprint. It is called the Kathara grid, which means the light, sound, one grid or unity grid of light waves and sound waves or scalar waves that form a blueprint, a tangible blueprint of energy upon which particles and antiparticles accrete or pull in to fill out a form, a waveform, into three-dimensional flesh or three-dimensional matter if you're a planet. The information that we've received the beginning of today, and it was information that they told me, the beings that I work with are called the Guardian Alliance. That's just kind of like an easy nickname. There'll be information distributed or available tomorrow that's the introduction for that large manual you see up there, this one. In this, there's a lot of explanation already as far as who I am, who the Guardian Alliance is, what we're involved with, all of that. People that aren't planning to purchase this, I do suggest it just because there's a huge amount of information in here that just, I can't even qualify it compared to anything else. It's personal, but it's also massive. But in this particular manual, the first section is dedicated to explaining a bit about what the Azurite Temple is, why it was created. There's information on something called the Cloister Doratura plates, which are holographic discs that hold ancient history records. And every few generations or so, there are 3 people chosen because they incarnate to serve that role, and they come in conscious sometimes. They come in conscious as speakers. They are approached in early childhood, usually. I was. And they are taken to places that on this planet they tell you don't exist, but they do. Physically taken. They are showed a procedure of translating data from these history records. The history records hold the science records as well, and the race records as far as where we came from. They hold the ancient spiritual teachings of something called the Founders' Races, which were the first races that came into manifest form in this 15-dimensional time matrix. The information that we bring to you, piece by piece, wave by wave, is drawn from the Cloister Doratura plates. It is not channeled information. In fact, we don't endorse channeling unless you know exactly what you're doing with your 15-dimensional anatomy, because you can hurt yourself. There are things in the interdimensional spectrum that if you don't know how to use your energy fields in a proper way, can cause harm to your energy fields. So the new people that are here, I don't want you to make any mistake that this is channeled information. It's not that I can't channel, but when you get to a certain level of understanding the mechanics of things, you realize you don't have to be a channel. There are higher levels of interdimensional communication available to you. Channeling, as it's done in the New Age movement, is a situation where beings from a different density level, a different level of matter, this is the most dense level of matter. Well, in channeling, beings from a less dense level of matter literally push their energy into your bioenergetic fields and into your DNA template. They move their consciousness into your body, and very often they take over, which is called going into trance. The danger in that practice is that, A, channels don't even know who they're dealing with. A lot of channels will say, oh, I channeled this angel, I channeled that angel. My first question is, how do you know it's an angel from a fallen angel? Do you know the difference? So when I talk about the information, when I bring this information to you, there is a level of what the guardian races of this time matrix consider integrity, because it is not brought through in a way that allows it to be compromised. The information in this weekend's workshop was on 14th dimensional security clearance, which means, first of all, I don't get it until right before I transmit it to you, which is enough to drive me crazy, but I don't have the luxury of that reaction, so I don't go there. That means that a program of the most intensive data that I have seen given yet is still in me in energy form and running through me, there for translation, but it's not on paper yet. The closest we have is the itinerary type thing you'll be getting at the 9 o'clock break. The reason we don't have it now is because right before I came, that's what I pulled off the computer to make the master. The information in here, I will read to you some of the things that are in this course. And it's like, this is ancient history that I do have the memory of, but to bring this level of detail into this space-time frame is not an easy thing to do. So I will do my best to relearn it and remember it well enough that I can give it to you in a way that you can appreciate and enjoy it, so you can remember it. Because in truth, the information, even some of the most highest level information, doesn't belong to me. It doesn't just belong to the guardian races. It belongs to every being that's manifest in this time matrix. We're just translators who keep it alive in different reality systems. Now, the first subject that we'll be talking about, the thing is called Mechanics of Manifestation and Embodying Your Heroic Future. That was the title that they gave me a couple of weeks ago when we were just putting the things out on the internet to let people know that we were giving a workshop. It always goes this way with the higher level data. I'll get the title, they'll give me the title, and right before I will get the information that becomes a transmission of frequency that I have spent 20 years learning to translate through my biosystems, so I can stretch it out into words and slow it down so it can translate into my home language. Now, they added this as the big title, so you can consider the original title a subtitle. The big title is Mind, Matter, Merkaba, and Mastery. Now, we're going to get into something called manifestation templates, or the blueprints for manifestation. The people who have been with this work for a while, that's not a new concept. I'm going to have fun trying to help the people who have not been a part of the workshops coming to get to a point where you can understand that easily. There is also a track record of work behind us that's been given since 99. All of the work, literally, that's in writing has been done since 99. And I tell you, I could use clones to bring it down. But if there are holes in what I'm talking about to the people who are not familiar with this, it is worth getting some of the product. I'd give it to you free if I could. But at this point, so many hours a day are required that I have to make a choice. I'm either here to be a spiritual being and bring the knowledge that I incarnated to bring, or I have to go get a 9-to-5 job and try to figure out how to do the same thing, which I can't do. So the product is available. If there are things that don't make sense to you, I do apologize in advance. It just simply means that there is a whole bunch of information of a different frequency, because information is energy equals frequency, just like radio waves are frequency. There are certain channels and stations of frequency of our consciousness. The earlier information was a bit lower frequency, and progressively we've been raising in frequency in the information. So if you come in at this level of frequency, but you haven't assembled into your consciousness yet the frequencies and the information they carry that would be between here and where your body is down here, there will be gaps in your understanding. That's normal, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're not aware enough to deal with this kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that you're stupid. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong either. It simply means there's a frequency bridge that needs to be made, and there are products in the form of audios and videos from workshops. We've tried to tape everything we do because we never do the same thing twice, and it just builds every time. So there is the stepping down of frequency. If we're up here and you need to fill in blanks here, you can find a lot about dimensional structure and the templates I talk about in the Kathara Biospiritual Healing System. It teaches you the context of healing, which is the 15-dimensional structure. It tells you what dimensions are, it explains what they are, it explains their structure, it explains the basic things you need to understand if you're going to do master's template mechanics, which is what being a master is. It's really interesting. In the New Age movement, there's a lot of people that walk around claiming to be ascended masters. And I ask them certain questions, and they haven't a clue. And that shows me something. If they were ascended masters, as they claim to be, they would have open in their bodies the level of consciousness that could answer those particular questions that have to do with simple creation mechanics. I don't like to claim anything except I am who I am. There's information in, this is some of the stuff I'll put out for tomorrow, for just for the people who don't know me and who don't have this information, because you other guys that have other manuals and things have the introductory information. There's information on my biography that'll give you some idea of who I am and how I came to be doing what I'm doing. But I just want you to understand that we can help each other here by realizing there's levels of consciousness that are all sorts of different frequencies in the room right now. For everybody to understand what was given to me to bring to you so we could all understand, we need to go into what's called an average mean of consciousness, or a frequency band that can hold all of the consciousness in the room, that it's low enough where the people who don't have any of this information can catch it, and where it's high enough where they can come up, but the people that are up here that already have lots of information aren't going to drift off and fall asleep and be bored to death. Because boredom comes from frequency oversaturation. You start to get feeling bored when you've gone through a frequency pattern over and over and over, and you don't need that frequency coming in anymore. So it kind of puts you to sleep, and your mind drifts off, and you get like attention deficit disorder temporarily and that kind of thing. So I will try to You see, what I usually do is I'll go right into the hard stuff. Like say, well, this is that. Yeah, this is, the intense stuff. This is the new stuff. Because I get excited when each level of new stuff is given. I kind of pound away at my computer going, oh, look at this. And, Michael will walk by and say, look. And I'll read a part of it and say, oh, that's neat. And I know it connects to this, but I don't know how yet, So this is how the information goes. But if I start with that level with you, I'm going to lose most of you. So I'll simply start with how it was given to me as far as the sequence. Now, with these programs, I don't do the sequencing of information. I don't decide what I'm going to teach first and what I'm going to teach after that. This comes through directly from the plate translations. This is how the information is sequenced in frequency on those holographic disc cloistered Oratura plates. There's a reason for that. The lower frequency comes first and it leads up to the higher. It creates the bridge of frequency that allows understanding to happen with as little gaps as possible. So the order that this information is given in is provided for me from the plates. And I try to stick to it, but sometimes I'll get a little urge from interdimensional communication, not channeling. All right? I'll get a little urge to add a little frequency here or add a little there, because that helps to compensate for if there's anybody in the group that's kind of going over here with their frequency because they lost that trail of frequency. We try to bring them back around so the understanding can still take place. Now, I used to be very self-conscious about one thing when I was doing public presentation. First of all, I hated public presentation. I was always very shy and liked to be invisible, and this job doesn't allow me to do that. But one of the things that was most difficult for me was standing up in front of a group of people and trying to explain a level of frequency to them that they have not ever encountered. Trying to explain my experience in the way I understand it that involves interdimensional communication that is not channeling. Telepathic communication is different than channeling. So you will see, because I just let myself be who I am these days, and I don't kind of get embarrassed when new information comes in while I'm standing here talking to you. But there will be some times when the people that I work with, that I'll explain a little bit about, but I don't want to bore the people who already know that, so that information is in writing, they will literally send thought forms to me that come out as telepathic communication, where I can hear them. That, in that way, it will allow me to be more responsive to the group, in the best way that I can. So at times, you may see me do little things like, okay. And once in a while, you'll find I'll be on a roll and saying something, and then all of a sudden, they'd be like getting tapped on the head. Like, wait a minute. Shift frequency, okay? It would be better at this frequency. And then literally, my thought train will go in a different line, but I'll say, they did it again. So if you see these things happen with me, I'm not a nut, I'm not a flake, and I'm not a channel, but I am responsive to the moment, because that allows me to be the best transmitter of information that I can be. As a speaker, as a teacher, that's what it's my job to do, just transmit information to you in the best way I know how. Now, when we get into our itinerary for this presentation, we will begin tomorrow with the heavy stuff, which means I'm going to be up all night trying to put as much of it on paper as I can get, because right now, when it's on security clearance and it's given to me on the spot where I don't have any paperwork myself walking into it, I will do my best to stay up all night, and I've done this before. I've done numerous workshops, literally no sleep, because I know how important the paperwork can be in helping you to remember. You might get it once you're here in this frequency, but once you leave and go back to a different frequency that you're more used to, you start losing pieces of it, because the group helps to sustain the awareness in each individual. So I will do my best to put as much of this information into what I call a chart pack, which are small packages usually filled with diagrams, and those diagrams take hours. I will have something for you on paper. I'm not sure exactly how much of it. If nothing else, at least the techniques will be written down on paper, because there are several techniques that are going to be given. Some of them will be given Sunday, some will be given tomorrow. That they ran them through me really fast once as I was sitting at the computer trying to proof this to get it out of the printer for the master. I wouldn't even remember it. If it's here, do this, do this, do this, and then you like walk out the door, what did I just do? You know, you will have the technique. The techniques, there are several on paper, but I will also try to give you other pertinent information. Now, if you really want to understand the context that this takes place within, and if you want to be able to have a whole bunch of other techniques that will facilitate your use of the master's level techniques that are being given now, the new manual, what I do with it here, the new manual is, this thing contains some amazing things. It's called the Emerald Covenant Masters Templar Stewardship Initiative. All right, it's the Secrets of the Amenti Stargates and the Grail Quest Signet Roundtables. This tells you about your body structure, about your subtle body structure, about dimensional structure, and it also tells you about all the forbidden hidden history, and it tells you about grid mechanics and something called the Rainbow Roundtables, which is a program of science and spirit united that the ancients practiced when they were guardians of the planetary energy systems and the stargates. We're being given this information because we are being prepared. Our race is being prepared to resume what was once our position. We were the guardians and the security team for the Halls of Amenti Stargates. The Halls of Amenti Stargates have not been opened in over 200,000 years. They only opened during a period of time called a stellar activations cycle. We have started, as of January 2000, a stellar activation cycle. The Halls of Amenti Stargates are opening. Now, this book would not have been given until about 2008 if things were going according to original plans in the higher dimensions. The book is being given now, and the crash course and information is being given now, because there are certain events that were listed in the book, Voyagers Volume 2, Secrets of Amenti. It was called the Amenti Ascension Schedule, which was talking about when particular things would happen in relation to the opening of the Halls of Amenti Stargates. They were not intended to open till 2012, and then in 2017, there was supposed to be an event called a 3-day particle conversion period. This planet has not had one of those in over 200,000 years. They can be smooth or they can be messy. It depends on how the planetary energy systems are working. There are certain events that have been taking place in the political arena since what we call the Atlantean period of 50,000 BC and forward to this time that are still ongoing events that were scheduled to come to a head during the stellar activation cycle that was scheduled for the year 2000 to 2017. Because of the events that involve an occurrence in history that's known as the Atlantean Conspiracy that is still ongoing, that was projected into the future here to reach its fulfillment here. Because of this, now this history is in that book, okay, in the large manual. There are things taking place here, that the events that were supposed to take place between 2012 and 2017, and this is new stuff for the guys who have been through this before too, this is just in, has been accelerated. Somewhere between 2003 and 2006, the Halls of Amenti are opening, which was news to me. I was waiting for 2012, and see, what will happen is there are a group of people on the planet called indigo children. Indigo children are called indigo because they have the 6th strand template of their DNA activated kind of like on idle, waiting to bring that consciousness and that energy in. They're born with that. They came here as a large soul group that were incarnations of the founders' races. And they go to sleep when they come into incarnation, just like anybody else does. Most of the people that come to these workshops, some of them are completely all, were indigo children, because it's put out on a minimum of D6 frequency transmission, which hits the 6th strand, which gives you, maybe I'll go check that out feeling. All right. The indigo children were supposed to go through a stage of awakening every couple of years. Certain amounts of their consciousness would get back, get into body, and they'd know a little more about what they were here for and what they're here to do and what their life purpose was. And they were supposed to have it kind of like a nice stretch and growing and waking up between the years 2000 and 2012. Well, because what's happening in 2012 is now due at the latest 2006, most likely and more likely in 2003. is the rush job wake-up call. It's like the difference between the sun coming gently in your window in the morning and touching you as you lay there sleeping in bed, and you feel the warmth, and you kind of open your eyes and stretch, rub your eyes a little, nice stretch out of bed, That would have been the 2012 awakening procedure. This is more like somebody comes into your room and flips the mattress over. Get up! The reason, now even for me, this is like, it's like trying to jog to keep up with yourself. This information is moving so fast. Now, for me to bring information through, my DNA template has to activate fast enough to keep up with the frequencies of the information. My body has been going through, I'm surprised I still look like a human. I'm just morphing all over the place inside. I've had, as soon as this transmission started to be given, just little pieces of it, little indications that it was something on security clearance that I wouldn't get until, the day of, my back went out for 3 days from Kundalini activation. I was walking around like this. As soon as that cleared and those energies synthesized, then my sinuses started going crazy. And I've been sneezing ever since. So my body had to clear a bunch of stuff out really fast to make room for this frequency so I could even bring the information through. Now, the information, it's actually very good news. It's manifestation templates. We're going to do basics. Now, here's where the people who haven't had any of the information will have a chance to catch up. We'll deal with template substance, which gets into primal substance, Partakai units, chains, grids, chelons, codes, scalar waves, fire letters, micro subatomic units, and anti-units. All right, that far, most people who've come to other things already know about those. So I'll warn you ahead of time, that will go fast. All right? And what I mean fast, there are times when I get on a flow of information and we're on such short time. I mean, this stuff you could take 3 months to teach. Little bit by little bit. You literally get bombarded with frequency and information and just hold as much as you can. But we will go that far, and it will help to bring the people up that haven't been, exposed to the work. It'll help to get you at least to understand some terms of reference that will be used in the rest of it. And if you want more detail on those, they are in the other books. There are some of them in the Templar book, and there are some in the Kathara healing book. Now, we will go from there into something called myons, dions, and trions. New words! This is information that's not in the Kathara Level 1. It was due for, I think, Kathara Level 4. We're only on Kathara Introduction to Level 2 of Kathara Healing. So these are some interesting new things that if we're going to learn about manifestation templates, and we're ultimately going to learn about what the heck are thoughts and what are we doing with them or what are they doing to us and how do we get control of our manifestation here to fulfill the original purpose that we came here to fulfill. How do we become our heroic selves, the best selves that we can be? And the best self you can be will be the most joyful. You will have the most expansive, full experience that you chose for yourself before you came into incarnation. So it's very personal, but it also has to do with how do individuals use their inherent power to be able to assist this planet through the opening of the halls of Amenti stargates so this planet keeps its energetic integrity. And how do the indigo children fill the big secret that their mission was about that has only been recently revealed. The big secret was the indigo children incarnated here because it was known that stellar activation would happen, and every time a stellar activation cycle happens, it ends in a 3-day particle conversion period, which is very intense information. Some of it's contained in Voyager's Volume 2, Secrets of Amenti. However, it is a period of time that people or beings that cannot go into a state that is known as Merkaba will leave the planet rapidly because their atomic structure will not be able to handle the frequencies that are coming in through the opening of the stargates. Indigos came here to provide what is called a host matrix field for the people on this planet who do not have that level of DNA strand activation, so their particles can't hold those frequencies. The indigos on the planet, when they wake up, create an energy field that helps to hold what's called a planetary Merkaba stable. They also help with, during that 3-day particle conversion period, If things go well and something doesn't happen, that's usually catastrophic if it does, but we're not looking at that one, they assist in what are called temporary evacuations. It's been a long time since an evacuation took place on this planet. The evacuations have taken place repeatedly during every stellar activation cycle, only for 3 days. Where do you go when you get evacuated? Mars? No, you don't go to Mars. You go to inner Earth, which the people who know this work understand a little bit about what inner Earth is. They also understand what parallel Earth is. This all gets down to the physics of particles, antiparticles, and antiparticles, and different angular rotation of particle spin, or the spin rate, and the angle that particles that our atoms are made out of spin at. When we use Merkaba, which we'll talk about and learn more about over this weekend, we have the ability to control the activation of our DNA template, and we have the ability to alter and affect the angular rotation of particle spin, which means the electrons and protons inside of our atoms can shift in their electrical polarity from negative to positive or positive to negative polarity, which will allow the atoms to behave differently. It will allow them tolerance to what would be considered high levels of radiation coming from the stargates. You will only get burnt by radiation if you have a certain angular rotation of particle spin compared to the angle of particle spin in those waveforms. The indigos are the team that will assist other races who've been involved here for thousands of years. Once in a while they come and let themselves be known. They're to help get people in, if necessary. If they cannot, as a collective of indigos, hold enough frequency to keep a planetary Merkaba host matrix stable, then there will be evacuations to inner Earth that will take place through the halls of Amente and the related portal systems. This is a lot of information, and you're getting hit with really high-level stuff for the people who've just come in. And it could seem like, wow, I just entered a science fiction novel. I feel like that sometimes, and I've seen a lot. I've been taken to the halls of Amente, I've been to inner Earth, and I've been to what's called Terra in Density 2. I've been there physically. I didn't do it on my own. I had a lot of help. I was shown those things and taken to those places. So I would have, to my credit as a speaker, not just, well, somebody told me about this, and they said it's real. I know these things are real. I know that if things go well, people can be taken through. I have had other lifetimes where I worked with a team of indigos, and we assisted groups of people to go into inner Earth so they could go into the halls of Amente stargates, so they could do what is called ascend, which means shift out of gross matter density by integrating their spiritual consciousness from the higher dimensional fields, transmuting the body to the next dense state of matter, the less dense state. That's how you progressively work yourself out of manifestation and get mastery over the manifest experience. Then you can come and go as you want to once you have mastery over it. So we're on a very interesting mission. It could be overwhelming. I could be overwhelmed with it. I could choose that. It wouldn't do me any good if I did, and it certainly wouldn't do you any good if I did. So I want to point out that when you're exposed to information that your mental body or your linear thought patterns here, because where they hold your beliefs and your ideas and those kind of things that you got used to having because people told you that's how it was here, so you accepted it. There are things that may just make your mental body scream and go, what? That can't be real. And if the mental body doesn't, the little bit lower frequency emotional body might do it for you. Okay, my mind can deal with this. I can see the concepts. I can read all this. Yes, it explains it very intensely. Yes, it makes more sense than the scientists and the priests. Okay, makes sense. And the emotional body goes, I don't want to be here. I'm scared. Then the other part of the emotional body, it's a little bit higher frequency than that part, goes, oh, I remember something. There's a part of me that remembers this. We get to go home, So there are reactions that happen to this information, that it will be different for everyone. You might not have any reaction at first. Just, that's interesting. It may take you 6 months to integrate it. But at the rate we're going and the rate the frequencies are coming into the planet right now, the more frequency that comes into this planet, it will hit what's called your DNA substrand template. It triggers into activation your substrand template, which triggers into activation manufacture of different and new chemical compounds in the DNA chains. It brings more of you to life, whether you want to or not. So I have faith in the people of this planet and in the process, because this is a divine process. We'll awaken, and we can either help ourselves in the process by saying, okay, I'll roll with it. If you get hit a space where I'm clueless, can't deal with it yet, just know there is a place, a part of you, stationed in time ahead of you, which is in frequency ahead of you, that already gets it. So if you realize that now, you help to bring that part of you into integration with this part of you, so you help yourself to understand. It's part of achieving mastery. Now, the reason that the guardians get into explaining to you and to me things that personally, I was an artist, before I was activated to do this. I liked to paint pictures. I did not want to grow up to be a physicist. But at this point, I can have pretty intense debates with some physicists. The information is divine physics that is provided so we can understand not just the conceptual spiritual translation of God and angels and our higher identities and integrating ourselves and all that lovely stuff that's much easier to digest. There's also a scientific translation of what energy and consciousness units are doing to achieve those spiritually desired outcomes. So we're taught some basic physics of things that the physicists here haven't even found yet. When we get into myons, dions, and trions, we're going to get into the things that begin the process of formation of subatomic particles of positively charged, negatively charged, and zero charge or neutral subatomic particles. They group together in different ways to form what our scientists call matter, atoms. We're not going to go too heavy into it, just enough so we can understand a basic process where there is a process of going from what is called primal substance. And the people who have followed the work a bit know when I talk about primal substance, I'm talking about the first building blocks of anything manifest, which are units of consciousness called partikai, particae, and particum. They form certain structures that then progressively fill out to form matter. Well, if you have matter over here and partikai, particae, and particum here, myons, dions, and trions fit here, and then you will get your subatomic particles here. So it's a progression of the transduction sequence, how consciousness or thought gets transduced into externalization and into holographic projection of seeing a three-dimensional space-time system. One of the things we are going to get into here is exploring intensely, unfortunately, the idea that reality is a hologram. We're going to explore more of the dynamics by which that hologram is created, because it's created right through your body and right through your DNA template. We're going to, after we get through myons, dions, and trions, and subatomic matter, particles, antiparticles, protons, electrons, neutrons, the chemical clothing of matter, once we get past how thought becomes waveform, becomes chemical clothing, becomes atoms and molecules and matter forms, we're going to go into template structure, which gets into a real quick recap on primal order, dimensions, and primal fields. The primal sound fields that have to do with myons, the primal light fields that have to do with dions, and the primal consciousness, which has to do with trions, which are those neutral charged particles, or not quite particles yet, which has to do with source and what is called the still point. We are going to begin to understand where vibration and oscillation are two different things, and where the still point exists between them. And the still point is the point of power. It is also the point of your present moment focus of attention, but not this part of you, the part of you that's there when you close your eyes, that internal consciousness, that if your vision was shut off and you didn't see the hologram here, there is a stream of consciousness that is you, that's using this energy pattern that through the dynamics of creation appears as if it's objectified or external. That has to do with the relationship between myons, dions, and trions. But there is the stream of consciousness that is your consciousness, your eternal self. And it's from the still point where that consciousness intersects with the energy patterns that form the body and project the hologram, that you have the power to change the template that your hologram is manifesting on. We're going to learn a bit more. We've explored some of these as we're working with DNA activations and regenesis. We are changing the templates back to their original divine blueprint, which is the pre-matter, 12th dimensional blueprint that holds our original intention and the original form of our template. But we're going to go beyond just doing the DNA activation thing. We're going to start to understand that we can use our understanding of the DNA template and the new understanding of what the heck is thought, anyway, once we start to understand what the heck thought is and how it interrelates with the DNA template, we will begin to be able to speak the language of the DNA template in a way that we can do something called thought seeding or DNA embedding, which means we can very specifically place specifically organized thought forms that we would like to see manifest. And believe me, I'll tell you to start. I want to win the lottery is one of the hardest ones to make manifest. Just so you know. Now, the next hardest one is I want to make money. That's hard too. There's a trick that's in there that has to do with using words and concepts in a certain way that you're actually telling yourself, I have not this. So you are therefore manifesting the condition that you have not this. And you can want money for the rest of your existence, but as long as you have not this, you will have not that. So we are going to begin to explore the things that we have a little bit touched on before, and with the groups that have been working with this a lot: template substance, template structure, the creation currents, the Kirashe, Kundare, Antankarana, Kundalini, Turk, Daretic, and Telluric currents, that people who know Kathara healing are aware of what they are. And if you want to explore what they are more than what I will cover, because I will cover those relatively quickly, because this information is in the other manuals, and because the new information is so vital, it's important to keep the information rolling. So if you get lost, just remember, just kind of picture the other stuff we have available. It's like little donut lifesavers out in an ocean. You can swim to one of those and hang on for a while, and it absorbs that, and it'll carry you to the next place. Once we get through creation currents, and this is going to be I'm telling you, I know this is going to go really quick. So if you want to, if any of the new people are planning to buy any of the product, it's a good time to buy it. Like, I would even suggest like tonight before you go into this and read a little bit about the structure. If you're going to do by Kathara, read about the structure of dimensions and that kind of stuff. It will give you what are called aparthi. Aparthi are frequencies in your DNA template and your body template that correspond to certain levels of planetary, galactic, universal, and cosmic information. They're just frequency receivers that will allow some of the things that we're going to talk about to plug in more easily. I'm not saying you have to purchase those. There's never an obligation to do that. In fact, whenever I can, I try to give them out free. But the two manuals together are over 500 pages, and it costs a lot to print them. So we will go into, past the creation currents, into density levels, which we've talked about before, and the information's in those books. We know the states of matter, the people who have followed this course, and you will, if you read some of those books, you will have the states of matter. But what we don't know are words called thermoplasm, hydroplasm, siloplasm, celloplasm, and plasm. What are these things? They have to do with the density levels of matter. There are 5 density levels of matter. You have antimatter on density 5, you have prematter on density 4, you have etheric matter on density 3, you have semi-etheric matter on density 2, and you have physical gross matter density in density 1. A density is a 3-dimensional system. We have 5 3-dimensional systems, and that gives us 5 density levels. That is a time matrix. That's the structure and the context that we're having our existence and our experience of the hologram within right now. So we will deal with the density levels, a quick recap, and this is where the charts come in handy. There are charts in all of those to kind of show you visually the information is a lot easier to understand. We will go from there into a little bit of discussing what is this matter stuff? What is semi-etheric matter? What might it look like? What might it act like? We're understanding these basic things about manifestation templates because when we go into the second section, we're going to learn a little bit about how these manifestation templates create the hologram of space-time, and we're going to go from there into understanding what thought has to do with these, because we're going to learn that thought is the manifestation template that's composed of all these things and structured of these things. The structures that we talk about beforehand are the structures of thought. Thought fields are made of myons, dyons, and tryons, particae, particae, particum, and they become fields of protons, electrons, positrons, neutrons, subatomic particle fields. They interact in specific ways. There is a format to how these particles interact. And this is why a lot of people can get the fact, okay, I'm in a hologram, because the New Age has been teaching this for a while. I'm in a hologram. Okay, I just have to think my thought really hard, energize it, will it, intend it, and remember that I'm part of the one, so I am God. I am God, and I intend it, therefore it is. I didn't really want it anyway. This happens. I mean, there are partial truths in those things. But anybody that's ever tried that, I say, okay, well, what's your batting average, right? Out of 100 things you tried to make happen, how many happened at all? And how many happened the way you put out for them to happen? When you get to that second one, it's really bizarre, because other levels of your own consciousness reorganize them so they come out different, but usually better than what you had intended in the first place. But there are reasons why, when we try thought manifestation from the 3D mind alone, it's hit or miss. If you happen to create an alignment with your higher levels of self, and you happen to create an alignment between your particles and their angular rotation or particle spin, then you will create a thought field that does indeed jump out from you and in about 3 days' time start to become manifest. It's usually hit or miss. It feels like, well, I'm the creator, I'm the manifester, they keep telling me this. And then another part of you goes, why the heck can't I manifest anything? Why can't I do this? Why can't I master my body? If we're manifestors, we should all be able to walk around in the most beautiful body we ever decided we wanted. We should be able to even switch gender, I would think, if it's just a thought form and we can shift it and fix it. Yeah, right? You cut your toe and you're lucky if you're, using those types of thought manifestation things, if you can stop it from bleeding. There's a lot of things about thought manifestation that require a knowledge of divine physics. Not a heavy knowledge, just enough knowledge to understand what to do with the energy that is your consciousness when it's focused in a body. So we're going to get into some of those things. But before we do, we're going to talk about consciousness, the manifestation templates, and the hologram of space-time. We're going to talk about creation motive, which is the one consciousness. We're going to talk about the idea that's more than an idea. It's a manifest reality idea. But it's hard to see from here that we are all one being and one consciousness, and everything in the universe and all universes is part and exists within one conscious identity that is sentient, intelligent, has feeling, has desire, has intention, has will, and has the ability to manifest thought. Because we are each an aspect or a face of that collective identity that many people choose to call God, some choose to call Source, some choose to call the Unicide, and there's many other words for it. But that Source, that oneness, that one self, that is creation. Because we are units of the face of that Source, we are imbued with the potentialities and the characteristics of that Source, which means, as Source, as God manifests, we, as smaller aspects of God taking place within God, also have the ability to manifest. If we know what we're doing. It's like we're pieces of God that forgot who we were. And with the forgetting, we forgot how to do it. It's like we fell off the bike, hit our heads, had amnesia for a while, and couldn't remember how the heck to make a bike work again. We're relearning what it means to be part of that one consciousness and to be able to create from that space of I am Source, I am at one with Source. That doesn't mean you're God and you get to boss other people around, because they're God too. That doesn't mean just because you're human you're God, and you can go step on other animals and kill ants and cut down trees without asking permission, because they're God too. Atoms and molecules are made out of the units of the consciousness of God. There's a whole etiquette that comes with understanding the oneness. If we can understand the oneness of creation, we can begin to understand the core creation motive. How did creation come to be in the first place? Where did it come to be? Where is it, really, in relation to what else? We can learn those basic things about Source, and what we're learning are those things about us, because we are part of Source, and we can look at ourselves as the many masks that Source wears when it chooses to come into manifest hologram in order to experience itself in individuation. There's a part of each of us that is always an indelible life and my conditions. That's the big excitement. The emotional body wants to stand up and cheer because it's been centuries since anybody's told us this, reminded us. So then you start to play with the manifestation principles, and you get really downtrodden after a while because you try and you really believe and you gave your whole self to it, and usually to whatever group or guru or whatever told you could do this. Especially if you surrender your power, that's where you will not manifest with your desire. But then you get frustrated because you know that you wanted this to happen, but you got that instead. Or maybe nothing happened at all. Or maybe something absolutely horrible happened. There's a place of our own awareness that's in the higher dimensional fields. There is a still point in our consciousness that is the point that is always connected to Source, that knows the best way to organize a desire into an intention, into a pattern that can manifest in a way that brings the experience that we desired when we tried to set a thought form. We're going to learn the beginning of creating thought forms here. Thought forms as tangible structures. We have another program that was one of the first to be given. It was called Tangible Structure of the Soul. I think that's over there. If not, we do have it. It's an audio program that, excuse me, here's my nose again. It's an audio program that showed us the basic dimensional structure and began to show us where the different levels of our identity were, where our soul is, where our oversoul is, where our avatar level of consciousness is, our Christos self, where our Rishi level of self is, higher than that and more expanded than that, and where our own ascended master level of self is, and where our point of connection is to Source. So tangible structure taught us that. We learned the basic tangibility of the parts of ourselves that we can't right now see. What we're going to start doing in this workshop is learning about the tangibility of thought. And when we start to realize every time we think a thought, we have created a form in crystalline structure. It's going to do something. Just like we were forms created first in templates or crystalline scalar wave structure by thought forms sent out by Source from that point of oneness, every aspect of Source sends out thought forms in the way characteristic to its form. Every time a thought moves through us, or we think we thought a thought, we have set or added to an existing manifestation template. Part of learning mastery is learning mental body control, mind control. If you don't learn how to control your mind, somebody else will be glad to do it for you. Learning to control the mind is not a rigid thing. It's not a forced thing. It's a thing that must be done out of love. It's a thing that must be done in a way where you start off with absolute love for yourself, absolute forgiveness for yourself ahead of time. Absolute, I will not judge myself. This is how you begin the process of learning genuine mastery of your mind patterns. Once you can master some of your mind patterns, it's time to go into the pits of hell, which happen to live in strand template 2 and in your emotional body, because there are distortions that the planetary grids have that are stored in your strand 2 because you're on this planet, so you pick up the distortions in the energy patterns that create things in the emotion that the scientists and the doctors right now call the subconscious mind. There are all sorts of chaotic patterns there that can be reassimilated to where they can heal. But when they start to come up, they can create emotions that are not pleasant. You need to develop mental body mastery in order to say, well, if I feel that coming up, okay, first of all, I'm not going to react to it, it's just energy. I will acknowledge it and let it move through me. If you repress emotion because it doesn't feel good and you use your mind as a dictator instead of as a liberator, you will simply tie yourself in knots. You won't help your manifestation process, you won't do spiritual integration, you won't set yourself free. You'll actually just make the condition worse. It is a huge process that we're involved in on a personal level, just waking up and getting our DNA templates activated and getting to start to understand what is this thing we do when we think? What are thoughts? Where do they come from? Where do they go? If they really create things, how can I get better at this? You know, that kind of thing. These are the things we're going to explore. But there are so many things, so many levels, so many courses that really need to be given in between each level of this. I look at this and I say, oh my God, it is going to happen in 2003, isn't it? Because you would have given 5 years of increment material to get me to this point. This is the crash course in thought manifestation. It will end with a couple of techniques that are quite amazing. They're called Rishik level DNA embedding. How to literally create thought forms or desired experiences that you would like to see, feel, have happen in your hologram. Know where exactly to put them into the DNA by a simple process. Know how to energize them. First you initiate them. You put them in, put the thought pattern in that you want there. You need to put it in the right place. There are certain symbol codes that you can use to do this. There are certain symbols that are mathematical programs that correspond directly to certain instructions in your DNA templates and your manifestation template. We will be using symbol codes, which are light, sound, mathematical, geometrical programs. And not too many. There's not a million symbols to memorize or anything like that. There's a couple key master symbols. And a lot of them we've seen over and over, but nobody's been telling us what they do and what they are. There's 2 symbols we're going to be using. One of them is, well, we've called it the Hierophant. That just is something that's basically in control of your spiritual development, and it's a name that's given to a set of symbols, actually. But most people have seen a 6-pointed Star of David. That's going to be one of them, used in combination with other things. And then there's another one. They finally, right before I was ready to pull this off the computer, they finally told me what it was, because I've been waking up with it in my head for the last 3 days, going, oh, I know it's important. And I knew before I woke up from the dream state that I knew what it was. And I couldn't pull the rest of the data. Well, it was finally given. It's this simple little thing called the Vesica Pisces, which is 2 circles. Now, if you look at the 6-pointed Star of David, that is a symbol for what's called the Merkaba field. They're counter-rotating spirals of electromagnetic energy that form at their center something called a form constant. There are sets of Merkaba fields that literally hold our consciousness all the way up the dimensional scale. And inside each of them, they create, first of all, a sphere. And those spheres intersect with each other. And this is where Vesica Pisces has to come in. There's sacred geometry that gets you fascinated about, oh, wow, there's something called sacred geometry, and oh, that's a Vesica Pisces, and you can identify, oh, they're sacred. If you ask most people that have studied the classes that say, why is that sacred? Okay, Vesica Pisces, the 2 circles interwoven, where you have one circle, find its center point, and from that point, you draw another circle downward, or upward, or overward. It's known to be a sacred symbol, but I haven't heard anybody explain to me why. They've connected it to certain other things. They have to do with mathematical interrelationships. But I have never seen anybody explain why these particular symbols have to do with literally giving you the power for manifestation. It is. It's the point of creation of light. It's the point of creation of the holographic, we call it, foundation, or the screen upon which our consciousness will project portions of itself so it can look at itself in objectification. In truth, we're the consciousness of God, and all things out here are too. We're going to learn why these symbols, some of why these symbols are important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm not going to get into the phi ratio, and I'm not going to get into the Fibonacci spiral and the golden mean triangle, rectangle, and all that stuff. Because honestly, that information comes from a very ancient place called the Anunnaki Teaching Matrix. That information doesn't mean it's not true. It means, oh yeah, it's divine information, provided in a way that you can't exactly plug it in to quite do anything with yourself. But boy, does it keep your mental body focused on something outside of learning how to manifest. There are tricks for centuries and thousands of years and eons that have been done with sacred truth by telling part of it in such a wonderfully fascinating way that gets you off track of how to use it. We're going to go to the core of simply how to use these things. We're going to use the Vesica Pisces as the embedding code, because that's what it is. It is a code that you can use to embed things in the DNA, and then you turn it into something else, which is the activating code. So there's a process of using symbols, which are scalar wave patterns of light and sound, mathematically organized, geometrically organized, to directly put desired thought forms into the right places in your DNA template, so they can start their manifestation process, so you can start to see them in your hologram. It takes about 3 days if you do a good thought embedding. It takes about 3 days for the processes in the body, in the multi-levels of self, to begin projecting out. And that's because the way the frequencies are running in the planetary grids right now. When the frequencies are running properly in the planetary grids and in your body grids, it would be instantaneous. If you said, I will create a swan in my experience now, because you wanted to see a beautiful swan drift across a pond, that thought was a willed intention backed by desire, and it would go, boom, swan. That is the power that we have to look forward to eventually. Right now, we're relearning what it means. And it's a good thing, bless you, that we get to start slow. Because if we started fast, can you imagine, did you ever pay attention for any 10-minute period of what thoughts ran through your head? Did you ever notice how you can be extremely reactionary to certain things that happen outside of you? Oh, I'm fine, and I'm always thinking great stuff, and it manifests nice. And all of a sudden, like you're driving and you're thinking that, and some person pulls across, and you almost crash into them, and you go and you go off the side of the road. You don't get hurt, but you really messed up your brand new BMW. All of a sudden, your thoughts are not quite doing the same thing they were when you're happily cruising down the road in your BMW that you just spent lots of money for. There's a part of manifestation that involves responsibility of learning, first of all, to observe your thoughts. And there's all sorts of ones. You'll find, where did that come from? Who is thinking that in my head? I don't even think about it. I don't even know that stuff. You will find stuff coming up from your other incarnations that's stored in the subconscious. But not only that, as we will learn, and some of us already have, time is simultaneous. Your other incarnations are selves that hold a portion of your consciousness that are in different space-time locations and different body patterns. You're connected through your DNA template. When you hit a certain level of DNA activation that is of a point of vibration, they have a matching point. And when your point activates, it starts to bring through the energy and information and thoughts from that other portion of yourself. So when you start to become what is called mindful, becoming aware of what is going on in your mind, it's like a journey into a safari land with all sorts of foreign animals that you've never seen before, at least not in this life. It helps to, first of all, take it with amusement. I'm going to move through this, and no matter how awful, yucky, icky any of these might be, I'm not going to be affected by that. I'll just let them be, because once you let them be and move through you, they leave and go someplace else. They change into something else by the way you have reacted to them, because you add energy to them. These are the beginning processes of getting prepared to go into a place where all of a sudden you think swan and there it is. What if you think, you lousy creep, you made me crash my car, I hope you crash yours. Bang. Ooh, didn't mean to do that. Then you better really remember really quick that I can reverse that. Okay, I didn't mean that at all. No, now you just get up and if it never happened, so you learn to discreate what you created that you didn't want to create. There are processes in manifestation that go right down to how you're going to use physics in your body and in your mind. It goes down to the structure you have in your mental body systems, your emotional body systems, and your physical body systems, which is your density 1 level of self. But you have 4 other densities of self that you have to integrate into this process. Most manifestation techniques, quote, quote, that are out there right now in the New Age movement have to do with learning to manifest or seed thoughts from the 4th dimensional level. Wow. You're not going to get really good results manifesting directly just from your astral body. They're not going to have a lot of energy, and you're not going to have, from that level of awareness, you're not going to have the ability to place them where you want them, because there's a trick to manifestation. You say, okay, it's all a unified field of energy. Nothing is actually manifest. But boy, does it appear to be when you're here. I mean, you have like a body, and okay, it's a thought form, but if I go cut it with a knife, it bleeds, and if I go like jump off a cliff, it dies. So it seems really, really real while I'm here. This is an illusion, a holographic illusion, but it will be an illusion that binds you, that you will experience the cause and effect of that illusion, so long as you're focused within it. Now, where does that illusion come from? Where are you projecting this from? Is it like under my arm, or is it like below my feet, or is my brain doing it? Who's projecting this stuff? The interesting thing about projection of thought, perception of the hologram, is the fact that you will see as solid, projected outside reality, including your body, because this is part of your projected outside reality. It appears to be external, when nothing really is. The external stuff, you are perceiving it from exactly one-dimensional frequency band above its dimensional frequency band. If you are in third-dimensional consciousness, if your consciousness is focused in D3, your active consciousness that you call I am, that means you are perceiving the D2 reality field as physical reality. Now, each reality field is directly connected to one of the DNA strand templates. So, if you are in third strand activation, you will be having your consciousness in dimension 3, which means your strand 2 will be projecting out the hologram. So, if you want to change that hologram, you don't do it from D4, you don't go to the astral body. You project it down. You use the mental body and project it down. We have been being taught thought mechanics here that are the reverse of the way they work. So our thoughts don't get manifest the way we want them to, but they do get used as fuel and food for other people's thoughts that have nothing to do with what we want. There are little tricks that we learn as we learn the mechanics of manifestation, and we're not going to learn it all at once. I'm looking at some of this stuff and going, oh my God, what forms gluons? Now a gluon, and our guys didn't come up with that name. A gluon is something that our scientists have come up with down here that appears to hold the energy that links protons together inside the nucleus of atoms. It's like the glue that brings quarks together to form protons and those kind of things. There's a lot of levels of data to this. You don't have to know all of them. You don't have to remember all of them. Because honestly, I look at some of this stuff and say, great, I will remember this, I will know all of this probably within a week and be able to reiterate it off the top of my head. But don't ask me to teach a Kathara class next week. Because what's in that book, it's like I don't have enough room in my cellular memory to hold it. All right, so when we go into these processes, you'll hear new words and those kind of things. Some of them are more important than others. Don't worry if you can't remember them all. It's not a grueling course that, oh my God, to even use this, it's just too overwhelming. The processes become simple. The understanding or the explanations with the words and terms are just there to help your mental body realize that there is a linear, make sense, yes, this stuff is real connection to the action you're being guided to take with directing frequency. Because the mental body needs things strung out in a linear fashion. That's the three-dimensional level of your consciousness. The third strand of DNA governs that. The third level of consciousness needs to have linear sequential thought for it to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, it bounces it out as if it doesn't fit. So what we are doing by learning the things that, okay, instead of just saying, here, do this, and it'll fix this for you, we're showing you, when you do this, it creates this. This is why it will fix that. It's helping your mental body to integrate the frequencies. One of the really sad things that's going on in the New Age movement right now is there are a bunch of teachers claiming to be ascended masters and all sorts of stuff that are teaching you, oh, that's just mental stuff. You don't need to learn that. Just open your heart and put the right intention and everything will just manifest the way you want it to be. They are teaching you not to integrate the mental body. You cannot integrate the emotional body or the physical body. With your spirit bodies, you cannot ascend without integration of the mental body as well. It is a trick that's being done to actually tap energy from people from the astral field, which is the fourth dimensional field, keep them clueless and under this illusion of kind of like denial, happiness kind of thing, ignorance is bliss. And it completely robs them of their ability to use their emotional energy or their strand 2 or their strand 1, which are necessary to bring things into manifestation here. So we will learn a different way of thought manifestation than anything I've seen taught out there so far. Most of the teachers out there aren't bad guys, but they've been talking to channels, and that's the problem. You don't need to be a channel. You need to have contact with interdimensional information, but there are ways to do it safely. The information given here was done safely. Okay, we're getting, wow, it's already done. Excuse me. You know, okay. There's, it's going to be an interesting weekend. Yeah, I had no idea it was already 9 o'clock. Time does something weird, by the way. When I get on a roll, so and I try to be sensitive to if people look like they're like, zoning out and passing out in the audience, I know that I've probably overkilled with frequency and it's time for a break. But I tend to just keep going and when I get down to thought. Did they come back yet, those itinerary thingies? Okay. Okay. We have the itineraries, these things that I'm holding in my hand here. It's a 2-page thing. I call it a sort of itinerary because when I do an itinerary my way, it's very linear and organized, and it has, section 1, this time till that time, then there's break, and then we do section 2. Very organized. I was born with a Virgo imprint, so I'm a perfectionist. I've learned to surrender that when dealing with cosmic information. So these pages are here. You can take one of these. It will give you an idea of some of the, I called it topics and techniques of discovery, because I refuse to put the word itinerary on it, because an itinerary to me is much more sequentially organized, so I tell you what time you're going to, go through what. This will give you an idea of some of the things we're going to be learning. And in truth, this was the one that was given for day 1. 2 pages worth. We've gone on this one from basic manifestation templates, consciousness manifestation templates, and the hologram of space-time, the tangibility of thoughts. What are thoughts? Where do thoughts come from? Where do thoughts go? That's the easy stuff. What is mind over matter? Then we get into conscious creation, mastering manifestation, introduction to the secrets of Merkaba creation, DNA embedding for manifestation, and embodying your heroic future now. Masters Manifestation Technique 1. We do thought seeding, initiating manifestation, activating manifestation, consummating manifestation, which means consummating it into your hologram, then clearing the holographic template so you can manifest what it is that you want to manifest more accurately than what's happening right now, because our DNA has problems, because the planetary grids have problems. Now, the reason this information contains, it was on security release. I just want to say this real quick before I do the break. It was on security release because it gives enough information about the mechanics of manifestation where it gets close enough relationship to explaining templates in conjunction with matter particles that physicists and scientists and all sorts of other people, some from this planet, some not, that if they got a hold of those mechanics, they could do a lot of damage with them. These mechanics are only being released now because there's going to be a lot of damage done if they're not used for the right intention. We're going to be given these mechanics, and as we slowly learn to work with them, we'll be able to teach ourselves as we go home into our own daily lives. If you use them, just the techniques, even if you forget 90% of why you're using the technique other than that's supposed to help me manifest stuff that I want, right? It will help you to begin to empower yourself with the stuff that means something to you. However, it will give us as a group the ability to make changes in what's called the planetary manifestation template. This gets into information that I think we're going to cover to some degree on day 2, which involves what in Voyager's Volume 2 Secrets of Amenti book was called the Amenti Ascension Schedule, which has to do with the opening of the halls of Amenti stargates and the 3-day particle conversion period. There are certain things the indigos are going to be asked to do to keep the planetary grid stable and to create a protection field for the life forms on this planet for 3-day particle conversion. The name of this new book is called the Emerald Covenant Masters Templar Stewardship Initiative. That is the name they gave. It also could be called the Christos mission, but that's a lot more vague. Now, Stewardship Initiative is for people who want to not only help themselves in healing and getting a grip on their manifestation and getting a grip on their spiritual integration, but who want to help the planet. And it's more than that. During particle conversion, we're going to get visited. In fact, we're going to be the visitors, the way it looks. We're going to explore some things called meage zones, which are transharmonic time cycles that pop into this reality field, I believe, once every 440 years, and they stay for 110 years, and then they pop out again. They're very good evacuation stations. They're opening in 2002. We're going to learn how magical reality really is. And we're going to, at some point, those of us who want to, and who really have their focus in the right place, and their intentions and their motivations in the right place, there will at some point be contact. Not by me, but by a group called the Iani. E-Y-E-Y-A-N-I. The Iani is a word that means of the Yanis. And Yanis is an ancient word that means the ascended masters from the primal sound fields beyond the time matrix. The Iani are in inner Earth, which is a reality field that runs at a 45-degree shift in angular rotation of particle spin compared to ours. They have been the ones providing me with the information. They are the ones that I have had contact with since I was 4 years old, and actually since birth. I did conscious fetal integration, and I'm one of them, but they're a lot smarter than I am. They didn't have to deal with the grids on this level to block out all your knowledge. They will be making contact, and so will a group called the Maharaji. They're blue humans. They're blue-skinned. They're from Sirius B. They have been one of the guardian groups, the guardians of Stargate 6 out of 12. They are the group that the person that was known as Joshua Melchizedek, or a.k.a. Jesus Christ, incarnated out of. He was out of that soul matrix when he came here. So this is what we're being prepared for. I was ready to deal with this in 2012. You know, like, okay, I'll get to the point where I can go out and publicly tell people, well, it looks like we're going to have some really wild stuff to see. And the interesting thing is, I said to the Iani, there's one thing I don't want to be, and I refuse to be, and that's a false prophet. I'm not into that stuff. And if you don't know darn well something's going to happen, don't you tell me it is, and don't you have me teaching people that it is. And they said, oh, what we tell you is going to happen. And look at it this way. If you find yourself in a reality system where it doesn't, realize you missed the boat, and you're in a place called Phantom Earth, and your body already incinerated, you just don't know it yet. There are big consequences to this, and there are big joys to this. We are approaching a time when things that even the Sci-Fi Channel people, their writers, haven't even come up with anything this good. You know, I certainly couldn't. So we're being prepared for a time of meeting our old family, of meeting the Iani. And this book is the beginning of their training course for the people who will be selected by them to serve as the primary guardian force of Earth's stargates here. There will be changes in the portion of the Earth that is called Bridge Zone Earth that we'll talk about a little bit. It's a timeline, one of the 3 timelines that a version of Earth is going to go on. And on that Earth, the Templar, or the planetary energy systems and stargates, are going to open, and they're going to stay open. And there are going to be energy systems, free energy systems, available on the planet. And there is going to be a group appointed as the protectors of those stargates, so they aren't used wrong, because you can literally blow up a planet in a galaxy if you use the stargate energies wrong. This is the beginning of an invitation into what's called the Emerald Covenant, Coevolution Peace Treaty, the Founders' Peace Treaty. It's an invitation to become part of the security team of the planetary, galactic, and universal levels of the stargates in the star system. It's an honor for me to bring this to you, and it was an honor to me when I was trusted with this material. So this is what all of this is about. And it's real hard to explain in a 3-day or 2-day workshop. But it's for something big. And we have the potential to see that big. And it will depend on where our angular rotation of particle spin is in our bodies, which timeline of the 3 we will find ourselves on. One is